The dust cloud rose behind her like a shroud as Rose Sullivan rode into the ranch on a borrowed mule. Her last dollar spent 3 towns back, and her stomach hollow enough to echo. She had been traveling for 6 weeks since the bank foreclosed on her father's property in Missouri. And the August heat of 1883, Texas had baked her skin brown and cracked her lips until they bled when she smiled, which she had not done in longer than she cared to remember. The ranch spread out before her like a promise, all weathered wood and working corrals, cattle lowing in the distance, and the smell of hay and horses thick in the air. She could see men moving between the barns, their shirts dark with sweat, and somewhere a hammer rang against metal in steady rhythm. Rose dismounted near the main house, a sprawling structure with a wide porch that offered blessed shade, and she stood there for a moment gathering her courage before climbing the steps. A man emerged from the house before she could knock, tall and lean with dark hair that curled at his collar and eyes the color of creek water in spring. He wore dusty work clothes and boots that had seen better days, but he carried himself with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly where he belonged in the world. He looked at her for a long moment, taking in her worn riding skirt, her sun-damaged face, and the desperate set of her shoulders. "Help you, miss?" he asked, and his voice was low and careful, not unkind. "I am looking for work," Rose said, lifting her chin though her voice cracked from disuse and thirst. "I can cook, clean, mend, help with horses. I am strong and I do not complain." The man leaned against the porch rail, studying her with those clear eyes. "Name is Nathan Irving. This is my ranch." "You look like you have not eaten in a while." Rose felt her face flush. "I can work for my keep. I am not asking for charity." "Did not say you were." Nathan pushed off from the rail and gestured toward the door. "Sun is getting ready to set. Stay for supper, decide after that." She wanted to argue, to insist on proving her worth first, but her knees felt weak and the thought of food made her light-headed. "That is kind of you, Mr. Irving." "Nathan," he corrected, holding the door open for her. "Come on in. You can wash up while I see about getting something on the table." The inside of the house was cooler, with thick adobe walls that kept out the worst of the heat. The main room was large and simply furnished, with a stone fireplace at one end and a long wooden table that could seat a dozen men. Everything was clean but worn, the furniture built for use rather than show. Rose followed Nathan through to a smaller room where a wash basin sat on a wooden stand, a clean towel folded beside it. "Take your time," Nathan said. "I will be in the kitchen." Rose washed the trail dust from her face and hands, studying herself in the small mirror above the basin. She was 22 years old but looked older after the hardship of the journey. Her dark red hair hung in a braid down her back, dull and tangled. Her gray eyes were shadowed with exhaustion. She had been pretty once, she thought, before everything fell apart. When she emerged, Nathan was at the stove, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who had been cooking for himself for a long time. The smell of frying bacon and beans made her stomach clench with hunger so fierce it was almost painful. "Sit," Nathan said without turning around. "Coffee is on the table." Rose sat, wrapping her hands around the tin cup of coffee he had poured. It was strong and black and perfect. She watched him work, noticing the breadth of his shoulders, the way his hands moved with quiet competence. He could not have been much older than she was, perhaps 25 or 26, but he had the settled air of someone who had already figured out his life. "You come far?" he asked, plating up beans and bacon and thick slices of bread. "Missouri. My father died last winter. The bank took everything." Rose accepted the plate he handed her, forcing herself to eat slowly though she wanted to devour it all in seconds. "I have an aunt in California, but I ran out of money in Sweetwater. Long way to travel alone. Nathan sat across from her with his own plate. Dangerous too. I had no other choice. Rose met his eyes. I will not go back to nothing. They ate in silence for a while, the only sounds the clink of forks against plates and the settling of the house around them. Through the window, Rose could see the sun sinking toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. "You really know horses?" Nathan asked finally. "My father bred them. I grew up in the stables." Rose set down her fork, her plate clean. "I can ride anything with 4 legs, and I know when a horse is sick or lame before most people would notice." Nathan nodded slowly, considering. "I run cattle here, but I keep a string of horses too. Sell them to the army, mostly, and to ranchers who need good working stock. My foreman knows horses well enough, but I could use someone with a real eye for it." He paused, studying her face. "I have 2 men who work full-time here, plus day hands when I need them. I do not usually hire women." Rose felt her hopes sink, but before she could respond, Nathan continued. "But I am not going to send you back out there with no money and no prospects either. You can stay on for a trial period. 2 weeks. I will pay you a fair wage, provide room and board. If it works out, we will talk about something more permanent." Relief washed over her so strongly that her eyes burned with tears she refused to shed. "Thank you. You will not regret this. We will see." Nathan stood, collecting their plates. "Bunkhouse is full with the men, but there is a small room off the back of the house. Used to be my mother's sewing room. It has a bed and a stove. Not much, but it is private. It sounds perfect." Rose stood as well, swaying slightly with exhaustion now that food sat warm in her belly. Nathan caught her elbow, steadying her. "You are dead on your feet. Come on, I will show you the room. Everything else can wait until morning." The room was exactly as he described. Small and plain but clean, with a narrow bed covered in a faded quilt, a pot-bellied stove in the corner, and a window that looked out over the corrals. Rose could have wept at the sight of it. "Breakfast is at dawn," Nathan said from the doorway. "I will wake you." "Thank you," Rose said again, knowing the words were inadequate. "Truly." Nathan tipped his head in acknowledgement and closed the door, leaving her alone. Rose sat on the bed, running her hands over the quilt, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something like hope. She woke to a knock on the door and pale light filtering through the window. Her body ached from weeks of hard travel, but she forced herself up and dressed quickly in her only other set of clothes, equally worn and dusty. When she opened the door, Nathan stood there with a cup of coffee in each hand. "Morning," he said, handing her one. "Thought you might need this." The gesture was unexpectedly thoughtful. Rose took the cup, warming her hands around it. "What time is it?" "A little before 6. "Come on. I will introduce you to the men and show you around before it gets too hot." The ranch looked different in the early morning light, softer somehow, with mist rising from the water troughs and birds calling from the barn rafters. Nathan led her to the corrals where 2 men were already working. "This is Tom and Henry," Nathan said as they approached. Both men stopped what they were doing, looking at Rose with undisguised curiosity. Tom was older, perhaps 50, with gray threading through his beard and squint lines around his eyes. Henry was younger, probably close to Rose's own age, with sandy hair and a friendly face. "This is Rose Sullivan. She will be working with the horses for a trial period." Nathan's tone was matter-of-fact, brooking no argument. "Yes, sir," Tom said, touching the brim of his hat. "Welcome, miss," Henry grinned. "About time we had someone pretty to look at around here." "Henry," Nathan said, a warning in his voice, "just being friendly, boss." But Henry's grin faded, and he went back to work. Nathan showed Rose the barns, the tack room, the breaking pen, and the pastures where different groups of horses grazed. He explained his breeding program, his standards for the horses he sold, the problems he had been having with a mare who kept pulling up lame. Rose listened carefully, asking questions, already forming opinions about what she saw. "That mare," she said, watching a beautiful bay in the far pasture. "The one favoring her right front. Can I look at her? Be my guest." Nathan leaned against the fence, arms crossed, watching as Rose approached the horse slowly, speaking in a low, steady voice. The mare was skittish, but Rose moved with patience and confidence, and after a few minutes, the horse allowed her to run her hands down the leg in question. "It is not the hoof," Rose said, straightening. "The problem is higher up in the shoulder. See how she holds it. My guess is she wrenched it somehow, maybe slipped in mud or took a bad step. She needs rest and warm compresses, not work." Nathan moved closer, studying the mare with fresh eyes. "I will be damned. Tom thought it was an abscess." "Easy mistake to make if you are only looking at the way she stands. But watch her move." Rose clicked her tongue, encouraging the mare to walk away. The horse's gait was uneven, but the problem was clearly in the shoulder, not the hoof. "You have a good eye," Nathan said, and Rose heard the surprise and approval in his voice. They spent the morning working together, and Rose felt herself relaxing into the familiar rhythm of horsework. Nathan was a good boss, clear in his expectations but not hovering, and he listened when she made suggestions. By the time they broke for lunch, Rose felt more like herself than she had in months. The days developed a pattern. Rose woke before dawn, helped with feeding and turnout, spent the middle of the day when the heat was worst doing inside work like cleaning tack and organizing the feed room, and then returned to the horses in the evening when the temperature dropped. She took her meals with Nathan and the men, and slowly she began to feel less like a desperate stranger and more like part of the operation. Nathan was different from anyone Rose had ever known. He was quiet but not cold, observant without being intrusive. He worked harder than any of his men, up before everyone and often the last to bed. He was fair in his dealings and expected excellence, but not perfection. He had a dry sense of humor that emerged at unexpected moments, making Rose laugh when she had almost forgotten how. She found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, noticing things. The way he gentled a nervous horse with his voice alone. The patience he showed Henry, who was eager but inexperienced. The unconscious grace of his movements, efficient and sure. Once, she caught him watching her in return, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch before he turned away. The 2 weeks passed quickly, and on the morning of the 15th day, Nathan found Rose in the barn where she was treating the bay mare's shoulder. "She is improving," Rose said, not looking up. "Another week or 2 of rest and she should be sound." "Good." Nathan was silent for a moment and Rose felt her heart begin to pound. This was it, the moment when he would either ask her to stay or send her on her way with her wages and his thanks. "I want you to stay on permanent," Nathan said. "If that is what you want." Rose straightened, meeting his eyes. "It is, very much. The pay is $30 a month plus room and board, 1 day off a week, your choice which day. You can use the room as long as you need it." Nathan's expression was carefully neutral, but Rose thought she saw something softer beneath it. "You are good with the horses, Rose, better than good. I would be a fool to let you go." "Thank you," Rose said, and this time the words felt less inadequate. "I will not let you down. I know." Nathan smiled then, a real smile that transformed his usually serious face, and Rose felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the Texas heat. September arrived, bringing cooler temperatures and the promise of fall. Rose settled into her new life with a contentment she had not expected to find. She wrote to her aunt in California, explaining that she had found work and would not be continuing west for the time being. The work was hard but satisfying, the kind of labor that left her tired in a good way at the end of each day. She began to learn the rhythms of the ranch, the seasonal patterns of cattle and horses, the unpredictable demands of weather and market. She learned too about Nathan, in small pieces. His parents had died of fever when he was 19, leaving him the ranch and a mountain of debt. He had spent the last 6 years building it back up through sheer determination and long hours of work. He had no other family, no wife or children, nothing but the ranch and the men who worked for him. "Do you ever get lonely?" Rose asked one evening. They were sitting on the porch after supper, watching the stars emerge in the darkening sky. It had become a habit, these quiet conversations at day's end, and Rose found herself looking forward to them more than she should. "Sometimes," Nathan admitted, "but loneliness seems better than the alternative." "What alternative is that?" "Choosing wrong. Marrying someone because it is expected, because it is time, because everyone else is doing it. I have seen enough bad marriages to know I would rather be alone than trapped." He glanced at her. "What about you?" Rose thought of the life she had left behind, the narrow expectations and limited choices. "I was supposed to marry a farmer's son back home. Nice enough man, but I did not love him. When my father died, he made it clear the offer was no longer open. I was relieved." "His loss," Nathan said quietly. The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning neither of them was quite ready to acknowledge. Rose felt her pulse quicken, but before she could respond, Tom appeared around the corner of the house. "Boss, we got a problem. One of the cows is down in the north pasture and she is bleeding." Nathan was on his feet instantly. "Saddle the horses." Rose grabbed the medical kit from the barn. They rode out into the darkness, following Tom's lead. The cow had torn her side on barbed wire, a nasty gash that would need stitching. Nathan worked quickly and competently, his hands steady as he cleaned and closed the wound while Rose held the lantern and handed him supplies. "She should heal clean if we keep it wrapped and check it daily," Nathan said, sitting back on his heels. His shirt was splattered with blood, his face tight with concentration. "I can do the checking," Rose offered. "Add it to my rounds." Nathan nodded, gathering his supplies. "Good. Thank you for the help tonight." They rode back together, Tom having gone ahead to bed down the horses. The night was cool and clear, the moon bright enough to cast shadows. Rose was acutely aware of Nathan beside her, the solid presence of him, the capable way he had handled the crisis. "You are good at this," she said. "Running the ranch, I mean. You make it look easy." Nathan laughed, a sound without much humor. "It is not easy. Some days I wonder if I am doing it all wrong, if I should have sold when I had the chance and done something else with my life." "But you did not sell." "No, I could not. This place is in my blood for better or worse." He looked at her. "What about you? Is this enough for you, or are you still planning to go to California eventually?" Rose considered the question honestly. "I do not know. A few weeks ago I would have said California was the goal, the whole point. But now I am not so sure." "What changed?" "Everything," Rose thought. Out loud she said, "I am happy here. I did not expect that." They reached the barn and dismounted, working together to unsaddle and care for the horses. Their hands brushed as Rose handed Nathan a brush, and the contact sent a jolt through her that she felt to her toes. From the way Nathan went still, she thought he felt it too. "Rose," he said, and his voice was rough. "Yes." He set down the brush, turning to face her fully. In the dim light of the barn, his eyes were dark and intent. "I need to know. Are you planning to stay, really stay? Or is this just temporary until you save enough money to move on?" "I do not know," Rose said honestly. "I have not let myself think that far ahead." "Why?" Nathan took a step closer, close enough that Rose could feel the heat of him, smell the scent of horse and leather and something uniquely him. "Because I am trying real hard to keep things professional between us, to be a decent boss and not take advantage. But it is getting harder every day, and I need to know if there is any point in trying." Rose's breath caught. "Any point?" "I am drawn to you," Nathan said bluntly. "Have been since the day you showed up here, all pride and desperation and fierce determination. I admire you, Rose. I like having you here, working beside me, and when I am honest with myself, I want more than that." Rose felt like the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "I did not know. I have been trying not to show it. You came here looking for work, for stability, not for some rancher who cannot keep his feelings to himself." Nathan scrubbed a hand over his face. "Forget I said anything. I should not have put you in this position." "Nathan, wait." Rose caught his arm as he started to turn away. "You did not put me in any position, and you are not the only one who has been feeling things." He froze, his eyes searching her face. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I am drawn to you too, that I look forward to our evenings on the porch more than anything else in my day. That when you smile at me, I feel it in my chest like something breaking open." Rose took a shaky breath. "I am saying I do not want to go to California anymore. I want to stay here." Nathan reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away, and cupped her face in his calloused palm. "You are sure?" "Yes." Rose leaned into his touch, her heart hammering. "I am sure." He kissed her then, soft and careful at first, a question more than a demand. Rose answered by pressing closer, her hands coming up to grip his shirt, and the kiss deepened into something that made her dizzy with want and wonder. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "I have wanted to do that for weeks," he admitted. "So have I." Rose laughed shakily. "What do we do now?" "I do not know. I have never done this before, courted someone who works for me." Nathan pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "But I want to do it right. I want to court you proper, Rose. Take our time, see where this goes." "I would like that," Rose said softly. They stood there in the barn, wrapped in each other's arms, and Rose felt a happiness so fierce it scared her. She had come to this ranch desperate and alone, expecting nothing more than work and a wage. Instead, she had found something she had not even known she was looking for. The next few months unfolded like a dream. Nathan courted Rose with old-fashioned determination, stealing moments alone whenever they could manage it, taking her into Sweetwater on her days off to walk down the main street or have a meal at the hotel restaurant. He was attentive and respectful, never pushing for more than she was ready to give, and Rose found herself falling deeper in love with him every day. Tom and Henry figured it out quickly enough, though neither said much beyond Tom's gruff observation that it was about time the boss found someone to share his life with. The work continued as it always had, the ranch demanding their attention and energy, but everything felt different now, colored by the joy of this new thing growing between them. In November, Nathan took Rose to the local dance held in the church hall. She wore a dress borrowed from the preacher's wife, dark blue calico that brought out her eyes, and Nathan wore his Sunday best, his hair slicked back and his boots polished. He danced with her all night, ignoring the curious looks from the townspeople who were not used to seeing the solitary rancher with a woman on his arm. "They are all staring," Rose murmured as Nathan spun her through a waltz. "Let them stare. I do not care." Nathan pulled her a little closer. "You look beautiful tonight." Rose felt herself flush with pleasure. "You look rather handsome yourself." On the ride home, wrapped in a shared blanket against the chill, Nathan was quiet. Rose could feel the tension in him, the sense of something building. "What is it?" she asked finally. Nathan pulled the wagon to a stop, the horses stamping in the cold. "I have been thinking," he said carefully. about the future, about what I want. Rose felt her heart begin to race. And what do you want, you? Nathan turned to face her, his expression serious. I want you, Rose. Not just for now, but for always. I want to marry you, build a life with you, grow old with you. I know it has not been that long, and maybe I should wait longer to ask, but I am not a patient man when it comes to something I am sure about. Nathan, Rose breathed. I love you, he said simply. I think I started falling in love with you that first day when you looked me in the eye and told me you did not want charity. You are strong and smart and brave, and you make me laugh, and you fit into my life like you were always meant to be here. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring, simple gold with a small stone that caught the moonlight. Will you marry me? Rose felt tears spill down her cheeks. Yes, she said, her voice breaking on the word. Yes, of course I will marry you. I love you too, Nathan, so much. He slipped the ring onto her finger, then pulled her into his arms, kissing her with a passion that left them both shaking. When they finally pulled apart, both laughing and crying at once, the horses nickered impatiently, eager to get home to their warm barn. They were married a month later in the same church where they had danced, with Tom and Henry standing up for them, and what felt like the whole town of Sweetwater in attendance. Rose wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, working late into the nights by lamplight, and Nathan could not take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle. The preacher pronounced them man and wife, and when Nathan kissed her, Rose felt like her heart might burst with happiness. This was everything she had never dared to dream of, this love and partnership and belonging. The ranch became truly hers then, not just a place where she worked but her home. Nathan moved her things into the main bedroom, the room that had been his parents' and then his alone for so many years. He made space for her in the wardrobe, in the bureau, in every corner of his life. Their wedding night was tender and a little awkward, both of them nervous despite their months of courtship. But they loved each other, and that was enough to carry them through. Rose fell asleep in Nathan's arms, feeling safe and cherished in a way she had never experienced before. The winter passed in a blur of work and contentment. Rose continued to manage the horses while Nathan focused on the cattle, but they worked together whenever possible, finding a rhythm that suited them both. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire, Rose mending or reading while Nathan went over the account books, their feet tangled together in comfortable intimacy. Spring brought new calves and new foals, the ranch busy with life and growth. Rose discovered she was pregnant in April, the realization hitting her one morning when she could not keep down her breakfast. Nathan was beside himself with joy, fussing over her until she had to threaten to make him sleep in the barn if he did not stop treating her like she was made of glass. I am pregnant, not dying, she told him exasperatedly after he tried to forbid her from riding. I know, but what if something happens? What if you fall? Nathan's face was creased with worry. I have been riding horses since before I could walk. I am not going to fall. Rose softened, seeing the real fear beneath his concern. I promise I will be careful, but I cannot just stop doing everything, Nathan. I would go mad. He pulled her into his arms, resting his chin on top of her head. I am terrified, he admitted. My mother died giving birth to my sister, and the baby died too. I was only 5, but I remember. I could not bear it if I lost you. You are not going to lose me, Rose said fiercely. I am strong, and I have the best midwife in 3 counties coming to help. We are going to be fine, all of us. Nathan held her tighter. Promise me. I promise. The pregnancy progressed without incident, though Rose did eventually have to concede that riding became uncomfortable. She shifted her focus to training the younger horses on the ground, working them on long lines and teaching them to accept saddle and bridle. Her belly grew round and firm, and Nathan would rest his hand on it in the evenings, his face full of wonder when the baby kicked. "He is strong," Nathan said one night in August as they lay in bed, his palm pressed against Rose's stomach. "She," Rose corrected. "I think it is a girl. We will find out soon enough." Nathan kissed her shoulder. "I do not care which, as long as you are both healthy." "We will be," Rose promised. The baby came on a sweltering day in late September, arriving with the efficiency that characterized everything Rose did. The labor was hard but mercifully short, and when the midwife placed the squalling infant in Rose's arms, she felt a love so overwhelming it took her breath away. "A boy," the midwife announced, "healthy and strong." Nathan was allowed in then, and he approached the bed with the same careful reverence he might show a skittish horse. Rose smiled at him through her exhaustion, pulling back the blanket so he could see their son's red, wrinkled face. "He is perfect," Nathan whispered, reaching out a tentative finger to stroke the baby's cheek. "You did so well, Rose. I am so proud of you." They named him James after Nathan's father, and he became the center of their world. Nathan was a devoted father, rising in the night to bring James to Rose for feeding, changing diapers with fumbling determination, walking the floor for hours when the baby was fussy. Rose watched him with their son and fell in love with him all over again. Life settled into a new rhythm, busier and more chaotic than before, but filled with a richness that made every sleepless night worthwhile. James was a good baby, growing strong and healthy, his eyes eventually settling into the same creek, water blue as his father's. Rose strapped him to her back in a sling and returned to work as soon as she was able, unwilling to be parted from either her son or the horses she loved. The ranch prospered. Nathan's reputation for quality horses and cattle grew, and they were able to hire another full-time hand to help with the increased workload. Rose proved to have a gift for breeding horses, matching stallions and mares with an instinct that produced foals that commanded top prices. The room that had once been her mother-in-law's sewing space was converted into a nursery, and Nathan built an addition onto the house with a larger kitchen and a proper parlor. James grew into a toddler, his first words horse and papa, much to Rose's mock dismay. He followed his father everywhere he was allowed, his chubby legs pumping to keep up with Nathan's long strides. Nathan was patient with him, letting James help with chores, answering his endless questions with the same seriousness he would show an adult. In the spring of 1887, when James was 3 years old, Rose found herself pregnant again. This time she knew the signs immediately, and she told Nathan one evening after James was asleep. "Are you happy?" she asked, searching his face for his reaction. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Nathan said, pulling her into his lap. "Our family is growing, Rose. Everything I always wanted but never thought I would have." The second pregnancy was harder than the first. Rose was sick for months, unable to keep much food down, and she tired easily. Nathan hired a woman from town to come help with James in the household work over Rose's protests. "You are not weak for needing help," he told her firmly. "You are growing our child. That is work enough." The baby, another boy they named Daniel, arrived in January during an unusual cold snap that frosted the windows and made the water troughs ice over. He was smaller than James had been, but just as healthy, with a shock of dark red hair that marked him as Rose's son. "Now we have one of each," Nathan joked, comparing James's dark hair to Daniel's red. The boys grew up together on the ranch, as much a part of the landscape as the horses and cattle. They learned to ride almost as soon as they could walk, and they were fearless in the way of children raised around animals. Rose watched them playing in the corrals, their laughter ringing out in the clear Texas air, and felt a contentment so deep it was almost painful. The years flowed past like water, each season bringing its own challenges and joys. There were hard times too, droughts that made them pray for rain, harsh winters that took a toll on the livestock, market fluctuations that worried them late into the night. But they faced it all together, Nathan and Rose, partners in every sense of the word. On their 10th anniversary, Nathan gave Rose a mare she had been admiring for months, a stunning bay with perfect conformation. "For the best horsewoman in Texas," he said, his eyes warm. Rose gave him a pair of spurs that had belonged to her father, saved from the foreclosure by a neighbor who had tracked her down through a series of letters. "So you will think of me every time you ride," she said. "I think of you every moment of every day," Nathan told her, pulling her close. "Have since the day you rode up here on that sorry mule, too proud to admit you were starving." "Best decision I ever made coming here," Rose said. "Second best," Nathan corrected. "The best was saying yes when I asked you to marry me." They stood on the porch of their home, the home they had built together in every way that mattered, and watched the sun set over their land. James was 16 now, already taller than his father and just as capable with horses. Daniel was 13, quieter than his brother but with a quick mind and a gift for numbers that meant he would probably take over the business side of the ranch someday. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked quietly. "Not going to California, not seeing what else was out there?" Rose thought about the question seriously, as she always did when Nathan asked her something important. "No," she said finally. "I found everything I was looking for right here, more than I ever dreamed possible." "I love you, Rose Irving," Nathan said. "More today than yesterday, less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too," Rose said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "Always." The ranch continued to thrive. James eventually married a girl from town, a sweet-natured young woman named Emma who was not afraid of hard work. They built a house on the far side of the property, close enough to help with the ranch but far enough to have their own space. Daniel went away to study business for a few years but came back, unable to stay away from the land and the life he loved. Rose's hair turned gray at the temples, and lines formed at the corners of Nathan's eyes, but they moved through life together with the same partnership that had defined them from the beginning. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, still stole moments alone when they could, still reached for each other in the night with the same passion that had brought them together all those years ago. When James made them grandparents with the birth of a daughter, Rose held the baby and thought about the long road that had led her to this moment. From that desperate young woman on a borrowed mule to this, a grandmother surrounded by family and love and purpose. It seemed impossible, like a story someone else had lived. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked, settling beside her on the porch swing they had installed when their knees started complaining about standing too long. "I am thinking about how lucky I am," Rose said. "How lucky we are." "I am the lucky one," Nathan said. "You could have gone anywhere after that first 2 weeks. I still do not know why you stayed." "I stayed because you asked me to stay for supper," Rose said, smiling at the memory. "And because when I looked at you, I saw home." Nathan took her free hand, the one not supporting their granddaughter, and threaded his fingers through hers. "I knew," he said softly. "That first day something in me knew. I just had to wait for you to figure it out too." "Arrogant man," Rose teased. "Confident man," Nathan corrected. "There is a difference." They sat together as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and rose, 3 generations of family under one roof, the ranch stretching out around them in all directions. The cattle lowed in the distance, horses whinnied from the corrals and somewhere inside the house. Emma was making dinner while James and Daniel argued good-naturedly about the best way to fix a section of fence. This was what Rose had been searching for all those years ago, though she had not had words for it then. Not just work or stability or even love, though those were all part of it. What she had found was belonging, the deep and abiding sense of being exactly where she was meant to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do, with exactly the right person beside her. The years continued their inevitable march. Daniel married a schoolteacher from Sweetwater, a sharp-witted woman named Catherine who kept the ranch's books with meticulous precision and could outride most of the men when she had a mind to. More grandchildren arrived, filling the ranch with noise and laughter and the chaos of young life. Rose taught her grandchildren about horses the way she had taught her own sons, with patience and high standards and an unshakable belief in their abilities. Nathan showed them how to read the land and the weather, how to care for cattle, how to be good stewards of the ranch that would someday be theirs. On a warm evening in late spring, when Rose was 53 and Nathan 56, they rode out together to the far pasture where they had once gone to check on an injured cow on the night Nathan first admitted his feelings. They dismounted and stood watching the sunset, comfortable in the silence that only comes from decades of shared life. "I have been thinking," Nathan said eventually, "about slowing down, maybe letting the boys take over more of the day-to-day operations." Rose looked at him in surprise. Nathan had always been a man who threw himself completely into his work. "Are you feeling all right?" "I am fine," Nathan assured her, "but I am not getting any younger and there are things I want to do while we still can. Places I want to take you." "What places?" Rose asked, intrigued despite herself. "California," Nathan said. "I know you gave up on going there when you married me. I thought maybe we could take a trip, see your aunt if she is still alive, see the ocean. And I have always wanted to see the mountains, the real mountains up north." Rose felt tears prick her eyes at his thoughtfulness. "You would do that, leave the ranch for a few months with you, in a heartbeat. The boys can manage without us. They practically run the place already." Nathan reached out and took her hand. "I want to have adventures with you, Rose. We built this life together, made it into something strong and good. Now I want to see what else is out there as long as I am seeing it with you." "Then yes," Rose said, her heart full. "Let us go have adventures." They spent the summer planning their journey, much to the amusement of their sons who had never known their parents to take more than a day or two away from the ranch. In September, they boarded a train heading west, their baggage loaded and their family waving goodbye from the platform. The trip was everything they had hoped and more. They saw the Pacific Ocean for the first time, standing on a California beach with their boots sinking into the sand and the vast expanse of water stretching to the horizon. They found Rose's aunt still alive at 83, a tiny woman with sharp eyes who declared Nathan a keeper, and regaled them with stories of the early days of California settlement. They traveled north to see the mountains, great snow-capped peaks that made even Nathan, who was rarely impressed by anything, stand in silent awe. They stayed in hotels and boarding houses, ate food they could not identify, met people from all over the country. And every night, they fell into bed together, tired and happy, marveling at the fact that after all these years they still wanted nothing more than each other's company. When they returned to the ranch in November, they were refreshed and ready to settle back into their life. But things had shifted somehow. Nathan did step back from the daily operations, trusting James and Daniel to handle most decisions. He and Rose spent more time together, riding out to check on distant pastures, or simply sitting on the porch, talking and reminiscing and making plans for the future. They became the patriarch and matriarch of not just their family, but the whole community around Sweetwater. People came to Nathan for advice on ranching and business, to Rose for wisdom about horses and life. They were respected and loved, known for their fairness and generosity, and the obvious devotion they still showed each other after more than 30 years of marriage. On their 40th anniversary, the whole family gathered for a celebration. Children and grandchildren filled every corner of the house and spilled out into the yard. There was music and dancing, food enough to feed half the county, and toasts that grew more sentimental as the evening wore on. James stood and raised his glass. "To my parents," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "who taught us what it means to build a life on love and hard work, who showed us that marriage is not just about the easy times but about standing together through everything. May we all be half as lucky as they have been." "Hear, hear," echoed around the room. Later, when the party had wound down and the grandchildren were asleep in various corners of the house, Nathan and Rose slipped away to the porch, their refuge and their favorite place in all the world. 40 years, Rose marveled. How did that happen? "One day at a time," Nathan said. "One sunrise at a time, one crisis at a time, one joy at a time." Rose leaned against him, feeling the solid strength of him that had always made her feel safe. "If I could go back and tell that desperate girl on the mule what was waiting for her here, she would not believe me." "What would you tell her?" Nathan asked. Rose thought about it. "That sometimes the best things in life are the ones we were not looking for. That home is not a place but a person. That love is worth taking a chance on even when you are scared." "Wise words," Nathan said softly. "I learned from the best," Rose replied, tilting her face up for a kiss. They stayed there long into the night, wrapped in blankets against the chill, talking about everything and nothing. There was something bittersweet about the evening, a recognition that they were in the autumn of their lives, that there were fewer years ahead than behind. But there was peace too, the deep satisfaction of a life well lived, and a love that had only grown stronger with time. The seasons turned, as seasons do. Nathan's joints grew stiff with arthritis, and Rose's eyesight dimmed until she needed spectacles to read. They moved more slowly but still moved together, still worked side by side whenever possible. The ranch remained their heart, the land they had poured their lives into, and they took pride in seeing it thrive under their son's capable management. Great-grandchildren arrived, carrying on the family tradition of growing up in the saddle. Rose held them and told them stories about the old days, about a young woman who came to a ranch looking for work and found everything she never knew she needed. Nathan would add his own memories, usually making Rose laugh or blush or both. "Remember the first time I kissed you," he would say. "In the barn, with the horses watching. I remember thinking you took entirely too long to get around to it," Rose would reply, and their grandchildren would groan good-naturedly at this evidence that old people could still be romantic. On a clear morning in early spring, when Nathan was 71 and Rose 68, they rode out together to check on a new foal. It was something they had done thousands of times, so familiar it required no thought. The foal was perfect, a leggy filly with the refined head that marked the best of their bloodlines, and they stood admiring her in companionable silence. "I have been happy," Nathan said suddenly. "In case I never said it plain enough, I have been so damn happy, Rose." Rose looked at him sharply, hearing something in his tone that made her uneasy. "What brought this on?" "Nothing. Just wanted you to know." Nathan smiled at her, and in that smile she could see the young man who had offered her supper and changed her life. "You are the best thing that ever happened to me." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me too," Rose said fiercely. "And you are going to keep being that thing for many more years, Nathan Irving, so do not start talking like you are going somewhere." "Not planning to," Nathan assured her. "I got too much to stick around for." They rode back to the house together, and Rose told herself she was worrying over nothing. But that night, as they lay in bed, she held on to Nathan a little tighter than usual, as if she could keep time itself at bay through sheer force of will. The years continued, and if they slowed down even more, if Nathan needed a cane sometimes and Rose napped every afternoon, it was only to be expected. They were growing old together, just as Nathan had promised all those years ago when he asked her to marry him. They celebrated 50 years of marriage surrounded by 4 generations of family. The party was smaller and quieter than the 40th anniversary had been, but no less meaningful. Nathan gave a speech that made everyone cry, talking about the best decision he ever made being to ask a proud, desperate young woman to stay for supper. "I figured if I could keep her for one meal, maybe I could convince her to stay for a lifetime," he said, his eyes finding Rose's across the room. "Best gamble I ever took." That night, lying in the darkness of their bedroom, Rose said, "I did not know you thought of it as a gamble." "Everything worth having is a gamble," Nathan replied. "You gambled too, staying here instead of going on to California." "Not much of a gamble," Rose said. "I knew from the start you were worth the risk," Nathan chuckled. "Liar, you were terrified." "Maybe a little," Rose admitted, "but I was more scared of leaving than staying. That should have told me something." They drifted off to sleep, and Rose had a dream about riding a mule through dust that rose like shrouds, searching for something she could not name. In the dream, she came to a ranch and a dark-haired man stood on the porch, waiting. "Stay for supper," he said, and Rose knew she was home. She woke to find Nathan still asleep beside her, his breathing deep and even. She watched him in the pre-dawn light, memorizing the lines of his face, the way his hair curled at his temple, the strong hands that had held her for more than half a century. She loved him more in that moment than she had thought it possible to love another person. "I see you watching me," Nathan murmured without opening his eyes. "Good. I want you to see," Rose said. He opened his eyes then, and they were as clear and blue as they had ever been. "Come here," he said, and she went into his arms, fitting against him in the way they had perfected over countless nights. The ranch hummed with life around them, continuing the rhythms they had established so long ago. Their sons and grandchildren carried on the work. Their great-grandchildren brought laughter and chaos, and Nathan and Rose moved through it all like the foundation stones everything else was built upon. Nathan passed away quietly one morning in his sleep, 3 months after their 52nd anniversary. Rose woke to find him still and cold beside her, his face peaceful, and for a long moment she could not make sense of it. They had been together for so long that she could not imagine existence without him. The funeral was attended by what seemed like half of Texas, people coming from distant counties to pay their respects to a man who had been a pillar of the community. Rose sat between her sons, holding their hands, and listened to the stories people told about Nathan's integrity, his generosity, his steadfast character. But what she thought about was the private Nathan, the man only she had truly known. The way he hummed tunelessly when he was happy, the careful attention he paid to her smallest needs, the passion that had never dimmed even when they were old. She thought about 52 years of shared mornings and quiet evenings, of laughter and arguments and making up, of building something together that would last long after they were both gone. After the funeral, Rose walked out to the barn where she had first told Nathan she loved him. She stood in the dim, dusty space, breathing in the familiar smell of horses and hay, and let herself cry for the first time since he died. "I was not ready," she said to the empty air. "I know we had longer than most people get, but I still was not ready." She stayed there until her tears were spent, until she could breathe without her chest aching. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and went back to the house. Nathan would have wanted her to carry on, to live fully for however much time she had left. Rose lived for another 11 years, dying peacefully at the age of 79 with all her children and grandchildren gathered around her bed. In those 11 years, she continued to work with the horses she loved, to guide and advise her family, to be the heart of the ranch Nathan had built and they had sustained together. She never remarried, never even considered it. "I had my love," she told anyone who asked, "more than my share. I do not need another." On her last day, lucid and calm, Rose gathered her family close. "Listen to me," she said, her voice still strong despite her failing body. "I want you to know that I have had a beautiful life. When I came to this ranch, I was lost and alone and desperate. Your grandfather gave me not just work but a purpose, not just a home but a family, not just affection but a love that sustained me through everything. Every day I spent with him was a gift, and every day since has been colored by what we built together." She looked at each of her sons, at their wives, at the grandchildren and great-grandchildren who crowded the room. "Love like that is rare, but it is not impossible. Hold tight to the people who matter. Build something that will last, and never, ever take a single day for granted." Her last words, spoken so softly that only Daniel, who was closest, could hear them, were, "Nathan, I am coming." They buried her next to Nathan on a hill overlooking the ranch, their headstones simple but elegant. The whole town turned out again, and if the ceremony was sad, it was also a celebration of a remarkable life and a love story that had become legend in the region. The ranch continued, generation after generation, the land and the horses and the cattle passing down through the family Nathan and Rose had created. Their great-great-grandchildren rode the same trails they had ridden, worked the same land, and grew up hearing stories about the woman who came looking for work and the cowboy who asked her to stay for supper. It became a family tradition, passed down through the years. When someone found the person they wanted to spend their life with, they would repeat those words. "Stay for supper, decide after that." A reminder that the biggest decisions in life often start with the smallest gestures, that love can be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the best things come to those who are brave enough to stay. The original house still stood, maintained and cherished as the heart of the ranch. The porch where Nathan and Rose had spent countless evenings remained, though new chairs replaced the old ones over time. Family gathered there for holidays and celebrations, and sometimes, on quiet evenings, people swore they could feel the presence of the ranch's founders, still watching over the land and the family they had built together. Their story was written down eventually, preserved for future generations who would never meet them but who carried their legacy in blood and tradition. It became a tale told at weddings and anniversaries, a reminder that true love, when found and nurtured and protected, could transcend even death. And somewhere, in whatever comes after, Nathan and Rose were together again, riding through endless pastures under Texas skies, their love as strong and steady as it had been on that long-ago day when a desperate young woman rode into a ranch on a borrowed mule, and a lonely cowboy invited her to stay for supper. Their love had been the kind that poets wrote about and singers sang of, the kind that only comes once in a lifetime if you are lucky. But more than that, it had been real and solid and daily, built on shared work and common values and the choice, made over and over again through the years, to love each other through whatever came. That was the true magic of it, the real miracle. Not that they had found each other, though that was remarkable enough, but that they had chosen, every single day, to keep choosing each other. To work together, to grow together, to face the world as partners in every sense of the word. The ranch they built together stood as a monument to that choice, to the power of love and dedication and shared purpose. And every generation that came after them, working the same land and loving the same place, understood that they were part of something bigger than themselves, something that had started with a simple invitation to supper and had grown into a legacy that would last forever.